Welcome back guys to my channel, Investor Salvage here. So today we're going to deal on what to look to while going to buy that second-hand car. So buying a second-hand car in Kenya has been challenging because people don't know what to look to, what to inspect or what to check while buying that car. So today I'll be doing an expose on how you can look for that car. So before, let me take a fruit. The doctor says a fruit a day keeps the doctors away. Let's get started. So when buying a second-hand car, there are a lot of things that should come in handy. Like for example, there is a way I do things. You will just come up with a checklist. So a checklist will be a list that will guide you on what to check while buying that car. Like for instance, this is just a sample of my checklist. So, like for instance, you'll have sections in your checklist whereby you'll be guided on what to look. This will help you not to leave any detail unattended to. Like for instance, I'll tackle the body, condition of the body, under the car, lightings, gearbox, everything about the car. So why am I coming up with this? I'm coming up with these checklists so that this will help me bargain even lower as far as the price will be concerned. Another thing, after showing interest in that car, maybe you've just seen that car online, make sure you do a thorough search on the car. So doing a search on that car will give you a hint of what to expect while going there. You'll have the number plates checked via the government portals available. So this will give you, you'll have to see the color of that car. It has happened, you might see the logbook saying that car is white, then while you go to that car it has been repainted maybe black. So you're just trying to clear the air on all these things. So having the year of manufacture, having the how do you call the chassis number, which will be written there, and all these things. So let us get started. So on our checklist, the first indicator is on the body. So this is what we'll be doing. When it comes to viewing the body, this is something you can just judge by what you're seeing. Like for instance, I'll be driven by the inconsistencies on the body when it comes to symmetry, how the curves are done, and everything. I'll have to view the tires. Are the tires new? Are the tires worn out? So on this case, my tires are new. My body is in a perfect condition. Another thing that I'll be driven to check onto it is the paint, the unseen symmetry, rust indicators. Like for instance, I've seen an indicator here, maybe of rust. I would want to know the extent of the rust profile, you see, and so many things. So while doing this will help you have an overview of how much you might or you will buy this car and how much you will spend after buying this car. Another thing, maybe I can just try and go around the car and look at the windows, the windshield. Are they broken? Are they in a nice condition? Like for instance, with the car that I'm having, the windshield is broken. So when the windshield is broken, this will give me a leeway of bargaining even further. So apart from that, I'll go to the interior. So when it comes to the interior, when it comes to the interior, I'll have to check on some of the missing panels. Do we have like this space here? Do we have something that is supposed to be there? Trying to look at, do we have the radio, the dashboard? Are we having the airbags fitted? When it comes to the cluster, is the cluster functioning? Is the steering in good condition? Airbags and a lot of things. So this will give you that overview of how much you will spend buying this car, and you'll be making a wise decision. Okay. So underneath the car, there are some things you'll have to check well. Like for example, my first indicator would be on the leakages, both the engine and the gearbox. So like for example, in this type of car, if you can see, this is the oil pan. The oil pan has some some leakage on it. These are oil leaking from the engine, and further on this cross member you'll find it has some oil indicators on this. So this is something to tell you that the car has lots of leakages. This is the steering. This is the steering pump. This is the steering racket. Yeah, there's some. This car is an hydraulic steering, has an hydraulic steering pump. I think that might be the one leaking fluid beneath the car. Going to the gearbox. Here is the gearbox. Even on the gearbox section, you can see some ATF fluid underneath the car. So these are some of the indicators that will make you bargain even further before buying this car. This is the transmission range sensor, and if you can look at it well, you'll find it has some ATF on it. So before making that decision of buying that car, you'll have to put all these costs into perspective for you to reach at a cost whereby even if you'd want to buy that car, you wouldn't have to spend much on restoring the car. So these are the shaft. Trying to check on the condition of the shaft. You can see the boot covers are missing or not in that right position. So you'll have to do service on both the boots. Yeah, so these are some of the indicators. So let me give you a contrast of another car beneath the car, whereby we might find it is a little bit dry. So let me take us through the same findings on another car. So these are Volkswagen. Here is the engine. So let us go beneath the car and ascertain some of the indicators. Yeah. So as you can see, from beneath the car, it's dry as compared to the other car. So these are some of the indicators that you'll try and check for you to know how much you might put or spend on buying that car. Another thing to put into consideration is the exhaust. And you're checking on the powder, or other call it muffler, if it is there. Like for instance, if you look at this, the Volkswagen, it has some indication whereby it was stolen, or people did whatever they know best. The exhaust system, to check if the car has, if the exhaust emissions are leaking beneath the car. So those are some of the indicators that you should check before spending that dollar on that car. Why? Because if you underlook on these issues, the car might cost you more while going to repair. So let us go on to our next checklist. So let us talk about the engine bay. When it comes to the engine bay, you've got lots of things to check on. For example, the ECU, where the computer is. Another thing, this is where the engine number is. Another thing, this is where the chassis number of your car is. Like for example, this is an example of where the chassis is. So having seen that chassis, these are some of the information that you'll have to cross-check alongside with your logbook. So if you have that piece of logbook, this is where you're going to cross-check and see if each and everything indicated on the logbook is what is indicated on the car. Another thing, try as much as possible to check on the wiring harness. So when I talk of the wiring of the car, this is very key because this relays information to the ECU. When I say the ECU is the computer. Yeah, let me show you an example of what I'm trying to check on. This is a second-hand car that I would want to buy. If you check closely at the wiring harness, this is the wires, you'll see some indication of burnt. See, an indication of burnt wires. So this will tell you that this car initially had an issue of the wiring harness. Maybe the car caught fire. So this is what happens. So if I would want to buy this car from the buyer, I'll point this out to the buyer and tell the buyer, it's okay, I'll take this car, but I'll have to do a new wiring harness to this car. I'll take this car, but I'll have to do a new engine on this car. Why? Because when the car has issues of wires, of burnt wires, so it will bring issues of miscommunication to the ECU. So these are some of the things that you should check keenly, you should observe keenly. And when it comes to tapings of the car, because most of these cars, when you drive them at the road, you'll hear cases of cars catching fire and some of these things. So to try avoid all these things, be very vigilant and on checking some of the parts. When it comes to the engine bay, try as much as possible to check on the missing components or missing parts. You find in some cars they might omit some of the useful things. Another thing, try and check the condition of the oil if it is there. You'll have the drain stick to check if the oil is there, the condition of it. This will determine as soon as you take that car, if you'll go and do some service on the car, going to the gearbox, to the gearbox fluid, try and check if it is sufficient, if it is there, a lot of things. So after doing that, going with your checklist, this will give you an overview of how much you will spend on that car. Another thing, it is to check on the battery condition. Make sure the battery that is in the car is in perfect condition and working condition, because most of guys or most of these second-hand cars, they don't tend to check on so many things. Or maybe the reason as to why they're selling that car, to avoid some costs, of which they would want to transfer those costs to the next buyer. So another thing, after doing that, checking on the engine, probably would want to start the engine and ascertain on some of the noises coming from the engine, and even starting the car, checking on how swift the gears are transmitting, if it is a manual car, if it is an automatic car. Those are some of the things that you should put into perspective. Another thing, for you to be able to check on the suspension, when I talk of the suspension, the shocks, the wheel, where the wheel touches down, the shocks and stuff, the car has to be running. So we'll have to take a short ride or drive with the car and listen to some of the noises that might come beneath the car. This will help us greatly on determining how much you're going to spend on buying that car. So let us do a self-drive. So while doing that self-drive, this is sufficient time for you to check on the information relayed by the cluster. Like for example, you'll have maybe that scan tool or going through whatever that is being relayed on the cluster. So another thing is we're trying to check if it is a manual car, if I'm driving it, how swift I'll be shifting the gears. So I'm trying to check on how swift the gears are shifting. Another thing, I'm trying to check on, I'm trying to listen to some voices with the suspension, with the music out, trying to listen if I can hear some of the noises coming from the shocks and stuff. Remember, you will be doing this while the radio system is off. Try as much as possible if you'd want to take the car on a reverse gear to see if the gears are engaging. So this is the time whereby to determine on some of the things when it comes to the transmission. If is the gear transmitting, if you're trying to do a gear ratio 1, gear 2, gear 3. So these are some of the things that you should put into consideration. So after doing this and ascertaining all the information given, now you can proceed and buy the car. So until next time, it has been Investor Salvage, and thank you for being here with me. The reason as to why I'm doing this, I'm just trying to create some awareness when it comes to buying that second-hand car, for you to buy something that will be value for money. So until next time, thank you for tuning in. Let us meet in the next video.